Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to those in the Pacific time zone. I think most of you are. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Good afternoon. I see it's now 12 o'clock, but we're going to wait a couple minutes before we get started, give folks a minute to grab their lunch and then log into the webinar. Thanks. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nate Palzar, Director of Administration with the California Product Stewardship Council and Treasurer with the local Pacific chapter of NAMA. I'm here today with my boss, Doug Kobold, Executive Director with CPSC. And today we're hosting the webinar that essentially recaps the most popular bills in our industry related to HHW in California. And for those of you that attended the Chicago conference a month or two ago, you'll see some similarities. We'll be discussing a few of the same bills. Doug's going to do a bit of a deeper dive, and I think he's building off of that basic structure to provide you with a really detailed and thorough update. We'll be talking about the general legislative process to a certain extent, but focusing mostly on some of the bills and some of the more nuanced details in each of those bills that impact our industry. So I'll take this moment now to say thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it off to Doug to do an introduction and start the webinar. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nate. I'm glad to see folks are joining us today to talk about what's been happening in California. I think Nate missed one other item about himself. He's also now recently a new board member of NAMA as well at the national level. So congratulations to you there, Nate. Okay, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
go ahead and share. All right, should be seeing my presentation. Nate, does it look good?
Looks great.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go briefly through a little bit about CPSC and who makes up CPSC, and then we're going to dive into the legislative side of things here in California. Let me get this going. Okay, so there we go. All right. So we have a board of 15 board members, and these are our executive officers. The majority of our board is made up of local governments. But then we also have private sector as well, because we receive our funding from both, as you'll see in a minute. But here are the 14 current sitting members. We do have one vacancy open right now, and so we're looking to potentially be filling that vacancy here soon. So we'll have a full 15-member board. But maybe you see someone you recognize on the screen here or the prior screen. Besides Nate and I, who you see on the screen today, there's also a lot of other talented staff at CPSC that really makes CPSC work the way it does. And we certainly, CPSC could not be successful without the board and also the staff that all get the work done on a daily basis. And we would not be able to even function without funding, of course, as a 501c3 nonprofit. We need to have funding coming in. And so a lot of our funding comes in from the cities, counties, districts, and joint powers authorities, the waste management authorities type things. You see a lot of them here. If you're tuning in and you're in California and you don't see your county showing in green, or you don't see a red dot where your city roughly should be, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to have you come in as funders of CPSC. Then, of course, we have our private sector funders as well, that help us get the job done with our, not only just with funding, but also with their expertise that they bring. Pretty much all the funders that we have on the private sector are involved in our industry in one fashion or another. So it's always great to get their input on things that are working through CPSC or working through the state. Wanted to give a kind of a picture of the national situation for product stewardship laws. And so that is extended producer responsibility or producer responsibility, but also what we call consumer responsibility. And I'll talk about that in a second. But as you can see on the map that's generated by Product Stewardship Institute, they update it every year or two. Currently, California, it has the most product stewardship laws on the books of any state. We're actually at 14. PSI and I are still trying to work out why we have two more than they think we do. I believe it's two that they are just not as familiar with, but we'll eventually get them up to where they need to be. But we do have 14 product stewardship laws on the books, and those are here. And I'm not going to go into a lot of great detail on these, except to say that we have eight laws that are true, what I would call producer responsibility, meaning that the industry is funding the program. Now, they may not necessarily run the program. You can see by the logos who is actually running the program off to the right of each program, and then who is, but the funding is still coming from the producers themselves. For the consumer responsibility or the visible fee programs or the deposit return system programs, those are on the left, and there are two particular programs in California that are related to household hazardous waste or universal waste. Those are also denoted with the red stars. But those are visible fee programs. So while there may be either a state agency or a nonprofit 501c3 nonprofit running those programs, they are still funded by us as consumers rather than coming from initially from the producers themselves under a true EPR program. So just a real quick overview of where we've been here so far this year. Some important dates that came through recently here we're right now in the we kind of finished the first year of the 2-year session. So California runs in 2-year sessions. And so we are the 25-26 session right now. And the last day to pass the bills in the legislature was September 12th, albeit they did have a special session on September 13th. And so that's why you'll see at the bottom there, I have an October 12th and then in parentheses 13th, last day for the governor to sign or veto bills. And that is because of that special session. He actually had, Governor Newsom did have until the 13th to actually sign bills. And my understanding is on the last day, he had like 120 bills that he either signed or vetoed. So he procrastinated a little bit. We probably know why. He is trying to position himself to run for president. And so he's got a lot of things going on. So now what's CPSC itself been up to? We're heavily involved or sponsoring 3 bills or co-sponsoring. First one's solar panels. That's probably the most directly related to us here in NAMA for HHW type programs. We tried this last session, which was the 23-24 session, 2 different bills. We were sponsors of the bills trying to get 2 things going. One, a hybrid producer responsibility, product stewardship law program going for the solar panels to provide the funding for the processing of them. And that was AB 2, and then under AB 1238, the other bill that we were running, that was to create a pathway for the back end, because in California, it is difficult to process solar panels because you don't know if they are the hazardous type or the non-hazardous type. And if you're not familiar with that, the non-hazardous type are your mono or polycrystalline silica-based panels. Pretty much most of that material is benign. It's not going to be hazardous. They don't test necessarily hazardous using the typical tests. But then there's also thin film, which uses cadmium telluride, which is a hazardous listed material, and therefore makes those panels hazardous. And unless you're a trained professional, you may not be able to tell the difference. So we were trying to carve a pathway under 1238 to get these panels to be able to be processed in California as universal waste, not just transported, but also processed as universal waste, which would open up the ability for the e-waste facilities in California to process panels locally rather than having to ship them out of state, which is what's happening now. That bill died back in that last 2-year session, and so we brought it back again in February of this year, and then tried to get it moving through. The original one had the pathway for processing California, but we were also trying to get the installations that are more like solar arrays, etc. We wanted them to be required to at least show that they have funding for decommissioning of the site, which would typically come with the land use entitlements, but also that they had a recycling plan so the materials, the panels coming out were not just landfilled somewhere in another state, but were actually going to be either reused, repaired, or recycled. And then we were also trying to form, and that was going to be an onus on the industry to do that, to fund that themselves. And then we were also planning to do a true extended producer responsibility for the rooftop solar, which is typically owned by the owners of the property. As a reminder, the previous 2-year session, we were trying to do a hybrid where those those consumer-owned or property-owned panels would be covered under a visible fee. Therefore, there would be funding to get those processed later when they come off the roof. But that again, didn't make it last 2-year session, so we tried to come back this time with more of an EPR role rather than a hybrid in the visible fee type program. But those two red bulleted items did not get into the final version of the bill before it got parked for the year. So this is AB 864. So it is a 2-year bill. It is sitting over in the second house, so it has plenty of time to move forward next year in 2026 and still potentially reach the governor's desk. There is a possibility we may just leave it with just the pathway for processing and then let that bill get through and get to the governor and then possibly do something else differently with a different author to bring in something more of an EPR nature towards solar panels in California. But more to come on that one as we work into the new year into 2026. The second bill there is AB 762. This is single-use vaping devices. We were co-sponsoring with 3 other groups, which would be Rethink Waste out of San Mateo County, Californians Against Waste, and also CalPIRG. And you may be familiar with PIRG in other states, but CalPIRG is one of their branches. We were trying to get, and that's public interest research group, if you don't know what PIRG stands for. And we were co-sponsoring to get single-use vaping devices banned from sale in California. And basically using the premise that if they are not rechargeable and refillable, then they are considered single use and therefore would need to be should not be sold in California, because this is a terrible waste, not only from just resources perspective, but also from how much it costs to get rid of these things, to properly dispose of these things. They are not only a electronic device, they have a battery, which is typically a lithium battery. And they also have, on the tobacco side, they have a P-listed hazardous waste called nicotine. And so this has made it very challenging to get these things processed here anywhere in California, or even outside the state. So these have been a problem, especially for the schools. And so we were working on this bill. It did end up getting parked as well due to opposition from some unfamiliar areas like cannabis, and also the law enforcement. Law enforcement, believe it or not, was actually not in favor of our bill either, even though it was to try and get rid of the single-use vaping devices that tend to be illegally sold in California. So that was a little bit of a head scratcher for us when law enforcement came out against it. So the bill is still alive. It is sitting over in the first house, and so therefore it must move out of the first house or out of the assembly by January 31st, or it is dead. And then finally, the third bill that CPSC has been heavily involved in is actually related to carpet. And you'll note that I show on there dead question mark. We are working with the author's office. We're working with the industry, who was a collaborating negotiating partner this time around. And we thought we were going to have this bill done. And unfortunately, got held in appropriations in the Senate, and we're not quite sure why. And so we're trying to figure that out. But right now it's going to be, we may be able to revive it. It's hard to say. Otherwise, we might come out with a whole new vehicle, but there'll be more to come on that particular bill. Okay. What else were we up to, or what have we been involved in? So there was a bill that was introduced in this year in 2025 that was related to pharmaceuticals and sharps, mostly for focusing on sharps. That was AB 754. We were able to meet with the assembly member Conley, and also stakeholders, and figured out that bill didn't need to move forward this year. The industry was trying to make one of the industry producer responsibility organizations running the program was trying to get some changes to the sharps part, and we were a little reluctant to get that moving without a lot more diving in of what needed to be changed. The other producer responsibility organization that is running the sharps program in California as well, it was not necessarily on the same page with the first one. So that bill got parked and then actually got gutted and amended into a wholly different thing. And that's why the AB 754 is scratched out, because it was no longer related to that bill. But there may be a possibility that a new bill will be brought forward in January of 2026 to address this issue and maybe a few others. Now, so that is one bill that's related to our industry, obviously through with the pharmaceuticals and the sharps, but also SB 501 by Senator Allen. This was a NSAC bill, a National Stewardship Action Council, was running this bill for HHW EPR for all HHW that is not covered under an existing program. So this bill was run last session, the 23-24 session. It was ultimately that was SB 1143. That was ultimately gutted down to just being a paint care expansion bill. And so in 2024, that bill was signed into law to expand the paint care program here in California to include all coating types of coatings, not and sealants, not just aerosols and latex and enamel paints. So that with that expansion, with that change, SB 501 was introduced in January or February of 2025 to try and to address the rest of the HHW. That bill has not moved very well and actually looks to potentially get changed to a grant program in 2026. Again, this is another bill that has to move out of the House of Origin, which in this case is the Senate. It has to move out by January 31st, or otherwise it's dead. So it is a 2-year bill until January 31st, and then it better move or it's dead. So we'll see what happens with this bill. We'll see if this bill moves or if it just gets dropped by the senator and by NSAC and their co-sponsors. Next one is the Marine Flares EPR bill by Senator Blakespear, SB 561. This bill also went through the process last session in the 23-24 session under SB 1066. It did get to the governor's desk and got vetoed. And so Senator Blakespear brought this bill back under 561 to try and resolve the veto issues and get a bill that would create the EPR program for marine flares. It has met with some pretty staunch opposition. Orion, one of the biggest manufacturers of marine flares, has been opposing it from day one, even back in 23-24, and so even threatened, believe it or not, to leave the state and not sell marine flares in the state of California. We're not sure if that's an idle threat. But because of the opposition out there, and the boating industry is now starting to come out in opposition of it, the author's office, Senator Blakespear, and NSAC and Zero Waste Sonoma, the two co-sponsors of the bill, are looking for maybe an alternative pathway to get this done by maybe adding marine flares to fireworks collection. And deal with it in that fashion, because as we may all know, marine flares are an explosive, and so they're not easy to transport. They're very expensive to transport, and therefore the reluctance on certainly Orion's part to have an EPR program, because while they can sell them for maybe $7 to $10, they online they can't. It costs $50 or more to ship these things out for processing. So obviously an EPR program for them was not going to work. So we'll see what happens as this bill potentially morphs next year. Since it is already in the second house, it doesn't have that same January 31st deadline. And so we'll see how the senator maybe tweaks the bill, or if she just lets it go this year. We'll have to wait and see. And then finally, EV batteries for Senator Allen, carrying another bill, SB 615. This is a reintroduction of the same bill number from the last session as well, from the 23-24 session. And that bill got vetoed by the governor. It did get to the governor and got vetoed. And so Senator Allen was bringing it back, making some minor changes to it, and he got it to the second house onto the floor, so of the assembly, so almost all the way through. And then the governor gave a pretty clear message to the senator that if it got through and got to his desk, he was going to veto it again. And so the senator had the bill pulled back. So it is still a 2-year bill. It still has the opportunity to move next year. But it seems like it's going to have to change pretty dramatically in order to get the consideration of the governor to sign it if it gets to his desk this time. So we'll be watching the EV battery bill to see what happens with it. There's still an awful lot of reporting requirements in there, which I think is part of what gives the governor pause to want to sign it. And so we'll hopefully be able to tailor this bill so that it's something that is workable, gets the job done, which is really to get the EV batteries into the proper hands and get them either reused or recycled as they should be. So more to come on that one as well. Okay, other things that are going on that have gone on in the 2025-2026 legislative session that are related to HHW. So there was an advisory group bill that got to the governor's desk, which was going to create this lithium-ion car battery advisory group to review and advise the legislature. The governor vetoed that, and in his veto message, he said that he already established the California Battery Safety Collaborative in 2024 to examine the battery energy storage technologies and safety considerations. So he felt that this piece of legislation was redundant and not necessary, was going to be a unnecessary cost on the state, and therefore he vetoed that bill. So not sure if this bill will be reintroduced next year in 2026 under a different bill number, but that's what happened with one of the lithium with the EV battery bills. The other one was SB 615, which I just talked about. Another bill that we were tracking pretty closely was the AB 998 Hadwick bill. This one was trying to do two things. One was to designate any vaping devices that were confiscated at schools as continuing to be household generated. Because if the school confiscates it under current laws and regulations, it now becomes a business waste, even though it's a school, and therefore the management requirements are so much greater. A lot of schools are actually just sitting on these. They are actually not moving them. They're storing them in buckets in storerooms because they're so costly to get rid of. So this was trying to allow those to continue to be handled as household hazardous waste until they reach their processing facility. But that part has met with a little bit of resistance. The other part that was in there was to allow HHW facilities to do some physical disassembly of products like vape devices so that you can get the battery out, get the nicotine containing pod off of there, which is the biggest problem with those devices, as I mentioned, under AB 762. So it was also to allow other ones so that HHW facilities could start to reduce their costs that they may be incurring when they have to lab pack those various devices, et cetera, and move them downstream to the next place. So this bill is also a 2-year bill. We'll have to see if it continues to move. It did get into the second house, so it does have time to move. It probably won't be acted on until somewhere between April, May at the earliest, due to new bills and bills that have that new bills that will be introduced in 2026, which will probably be about 2,000 new bills, or bills that are sitting in that first house and need to get out of their house of origin by January of 31st of next year. So those get precedent and priority over 2-year bills that are already in the second house. And so we won't see much movement on this one for at least till almost mid-year. Other bills, AB 1304. This one is a expansion of the paint care program again. It was really to actually train the workforce, and so this bill was trying to tap into part of the visible fees to provide funding to the unions to get the apprentice programs training going on, and so that one is another bill that's sitting in its house of origin, still a 2-year bill, but needs to move by the end of January. So we'll see if that one is able to move or not. It didn't get through this first year, so there's some resistance to it. AB 1325 by Assemblymember Michelle Rodriguez. This one is for lubricants and waste oil. So this currently in California, one of those programs I showed on the slide, one of the earlier slides, California has a EPR program in place already for waste oil, and that's our used oil program in California, where the oil industry, the new oil manufacturing industry, pays 26 cents per gallon for every gallon of oil that's sold into the California marketplace. That goes to CalRecycle, our state agency, and CalRecycle then takes that funding and provides funding to local governments to collect recycled oil, or also for any kind of a certified recycling oil collection site. They can also get funding from there so to offset their costs of collecting the oil. So we already have an existing program in place. CPSC was a little concerned to see this rear its head, because if you've got something that's working, why are we going to break it? The industry, not the used oil industry, but the new oil industry, has concerns about two things. One is that they are right now looped into SB 54, our single-use packaging law that was passed in 2024, and they are concerned about being beholden to that program for their new oil containers. And then they want to be able to change the program on the back end for the used oil that's coming back. So this bill is still sitting in its House of Origin. We are working with the author's office and the sponsors to try and see what we can come up with. We've made it loud and clear that the program that comes out of this bill will have to be better than the program that already exists. Because like I said earlier, why are we fixing something that's not necessarily broken? But we'll have to see where this evolves to. I'm hoping that, yes, we can come to a really good place with this bill and maybe shift the management of it away from CalRecycle, if they so that they can focus on other things, and then also but make sure that local governments and residents are not paying anything more than they already have been over the years. So more to come on 1325. Another one was AB 1394 by Assemblymember Wallace. This is Assemblymember Wallace's second attempt. He brought this bill forward in 2023, 2024. And we killed that bill then. This personal opioid drug deactivation and disposal system. It actually, their product is, these are the pouches where you put your drugs in the modified kitty litter in the pouch, and then you add water, shake it up, and it's supposed to make the opiate pills unretrievable. And so basically deactivating them. And then you throw it away. You throw it in the trash. Well, this is a wasteful thing when we've already got an existing program in California, SB 212, which has created a statewide collection for opiates in pharmacies. And that's a true EPR program being run by the pharmaceutical industry. So there's already a collection network, and there's well over 1,500 collection kiosks statewide. Plus, then there's also mail-back options, et cetera. So there's not a big reason to be doing this. And then two, in California specifically, it is illegal to landfill products that are 50% more moisture or have free liquids. And so that's in regulations. And so I have asked the proponents of this bill, the sponsors of this bill, does their product is it legally landfillable in California? And I've been asking this for well over a decade, and they have never been able to say yes. And so I don't think that's changed. So here's another bill that we hope is dead. We will kill it again if it tries to move, but it's got to move out by January 31st. So what can you guys do out there? If you're not already involved in these kind of at this level, is to, well, make sure that you support EPR. I mean, EPR is absolutely a great solution to getting manufacturers to change their ways, to designing their products to be more environmentally friendly, more durable, more reusable, repairable, recyclable, all those things that we want to see happen to them. And because they are funding it, if they're footing the bill, they're going to change how they do it. So certainly get if you can support producer responsibility organizations by helping them get their job done. That's a really good thing to do. Sometimes we need to go to the local level to get a movement going, because like our pharmaceutical and sharps bill from 2018, yeah, SB 212, we spent 6 years and we had 9 counties pass local ordinances for true EPR for pharmaceuticals and sharps. And that forced the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, to the table because they didn't want 58 different county ordinances for our 58 different counties. So they decided they needed to come to the table and negotiate something better. So we were able to negotiate SB 212 and get that across to the finish line. Now we have a statewide program. So that may be what it takes. Maybe when you got a calcium industry that doesn't want to work with you, then and try to negotiate in good faith, then maybe you need to use the local levels. Plus, not to mention, a lot of times the local ordinances tend to fly under the radar because most of the big companies aren't looking at an individual city or county. They are looking more at, ooh, what's that state of California doing, or any of the other bigger states, or even the smaller states. The smaller states actually get that same kind of similar pass. They're not focused on the smaller states as much because there's just not a huge market place for them there, or market volume, and so they're really focused on the bigger states. So even the smaller states can do that as well, and that's where having the states pass these laws, even the smaller ones, can help to get a bigger picture done. And while I don't believe we'll get anything done at the federal level at this point in time, we can always hope that maybe something will get done up at the federal level. But certainly we do not want something that preempts the states. So we should be watching for any federal ones to make sure that they don't preempt the states and make a weaker program for all the states that have done the hard work in getting bills passed. Oops. Okay, just wanted to show that what CPSC's got going on. We've been running our Refill Your Fund and Save campaign since 2015. This is the reusable 1 pound, refillable 1 pound propane cylinders. We use this as justification and built up a good network of refill locations and exchange locations, kind of similar to what you would see with the 20-pound barbecue tanks. Once we got this fully up and running, in 2022, we passed a bill to ban the sale of single-use 1 pound propane cylinders, the dark green Coleman or Burns-O-Matic propane tanks, the camping style. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed that bill because he thought we should do EPR. So we came back the next year with an EPR bill that failed. And so the next year we came back with the same bill again to ban the sale. And in 2024, we were successful in banning the sale of single-use 1 pound propane cylinders in California starting in January 1 of 2028. So we will no longer see those dark green canisters being sold in California at that point in time. Don't Rush to Flush, that was another campaign we started the year later to deal with the opiates and getting proper disposal of the opiates type prescription meds. So, and then that eventually developed into SB 212, the statewide program. Another one we did was our statewide Textile Recovery Act Task Force, which was actually the statewide Recovery Act Coalition, or I'm sorry, Advisory Committee, statewide Textile Recovery Advisory Committee that we started in 2020, and then we renamed it once we passed SB 707, which was the first in the nation statewide EPR program for textiles and for accessories. And so once that bill passed in 2024, we renamed the STRAC to the STRAT, and we managed that campaign. Then we have another campaign we started back in 2021, which was, my apologies, which was we call DR Cubed. And I mentioned this earlier about trying to make things more durable, more reusable, more repairable, more recyclable. So we're working on that, continuing to get that going so that we have manufacturers making better products overall. And then finally, back on the HHW trail, and you saw the earlier legislation I talked about on the marine flares we created in 2023, make the marine flares switch. This is basically trying to encourage boaters to buy the LED reusable, rechargeable type of display or emergency flare type things that are they're not pyrotechnic. They don't need to be burned. They don't expire. The pyrotechnic flares, you may already know, expire within 42 months and they need to be replaced. And that's where we have the problem with, we have expired flares that there's not a really good way to get rid of them. And so people are hanging on to them, or they're lighting them and dropping them in the water, in the navigable waters. So just things that shouldn't be done with these things are be done with them. So we're trying to get folks to convert to the electronic marine flare, just distress signal. So, okay, at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions that folks might have. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. And then here's my contact information. If you would like to ask me something later on, if something pops in your head, you can always email me or even give me a call. I apologize for my cell phone going off twice already in this webinar. So I'll open it up for questions.
Doug, I was able to field a few questions, so I'll share the first one with you if you're ready.
Sure.
What's the best way to get an ordinance started in my community? I'm not political, although I've seen disposal and recycling costs skyrocket for a number of products.
Well, one great way to do it is if you're in California and if you're able to join CPSC as an associate, if you're a city or a county, because then we can come in and help you to work on those ordinances. We do have draft template ordinances that we can share with you. We can come to your elected's regular council or board of supervisor meetings to help encourage the elected body to want to move forward with this. We have well over 100 jurisdictions with resolutions saying that they support EPR, and that always helps. So yeah, I mean that's the best way to do it. If you're not able to do that, I mean, and if you're up, say you're not here in California, say you're up in the Pacific Northwest, then there you have the Northwest Product Stewardship Council. They can help out there because a lot of them are doing ordinances. King County, Washington has been very good at creating ordinances. They were, as a matter of fact, the first EPR ordinance for pharmaceuticals that got through. And Alameda County was the second, but Alameda County was the one that got taken to the Supreme Court for their EPR on pharmaceuticals. They won, fortunately, and that's what opened the door for SB 212. But so there's ways to do that. Certainly reach out to us and we can give you more information. Let us know where you are, whoever asked that question, and maybe we can point you in the right direction.
Great, thank you, Doug. Next question is, how can I get involved in the EPR law's regulatory process? I'd like to follow that more closely, and I'm not sure how to get involved.
So again, either getting involved with someone like CPSC or some of the other product stewardship councils across the nation, depending again where you are. If you're not able to get involved with CPSC, Nate, if you'll be willing to, in the background there, get the Ledge Info link and drop that into the chat. There's another way to do it is if you log into Ledge Info, I think it's .ca.gov. That provides, at least in California, what legislation is current, what's going on, and you can search by topic, search by product, and it'll pop up everything that's going to be related to that search word or search words you put in there, so that you can check and see what legislation is out there. Just a fair warning: in the first year, in 2025, there was 2,400 bills introduced in the California legislature. And you heard me mention earlier that in 2026, we expect another 2,000. That will be on course with what happened in 23-24, where we had nearly 5,000 bills. Actually, we had more than 5,000 bills introduced over the 2 years, of the 2-year session. So it's a slog to get through to find those bills, and so that's why it's always better just to reach out to one of us PSEs because we're the ones that are typically following these pretty closely.
Excellent. And then the third question is, I'm interested in learning more about the campaigns you mentioned. How do I get a campaign started in my community?
So I'm being a broken record, reach out to us. We know how to start campaigns, but it's, you just got to find your champion. Find a champion who wants to carry that through, whether it be tobacco cessation type of campaign or a cigarette butt campaign, guaranteed over like in San Francisco. San Francisco was successful in passing an ordinance that allowed them to add 25 cents per cigarette pack that went to the city of San Francisco to clean up cigarette butts in the city. They found in their study that 25% of the litter they found on the ground was cigarette butts. And they were able to justify it. As a matter of fact, maybe more than that. But they were able to justify that ordinance and get it to their political body to pass that ordinance and assess that particular product category with in essence a tax that they could collect and then put into cleaning up the mess. And so I would definitely, like I say, find that champion, whoever that is, and hopefully maybe depending on where you are in the food chain of your organization, work with your managers and get or your city or city manager or county executive officer and make sure that they are on board with that, and they may be able to get the electeds to take an interest in it. Maybe all you need is one. Get one elected to start thinking about it, and then that one elected will want to push forward and make sure that that their colleagues are trying to row in the same direction. So that's the best advice I can give at this point.
Great. And I will note that the question said, I'm not political. So I think it's important to note that you don't need to be political to be involved in any of these processes. Chances are you're a technical expert in your neck of the woods, and just identifying that one person who is political or serves as some sort of government policy advisor within your organization is a really good place to start.
And I will tell you, with my degree in civil engineering, I was never thought I'd be political either, but here I am. So you never know.
Other questions? Anybody have any other questions? Feel free to pipe in or share it in the chat. While people are thinking or typing, I'll say thank you to Doug. What a wonderful presentation. Covered a lot of ground, a lot of different bills, but it's great to see so much progress being made, even though it's ebb and flow and it's got its peaks and valleys when it comes to HHW. But generally, we're trending in the right direction towards better management of HHW in our communities.
Absolutely.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Doug, do you have any other final comments or anything else you'd like to share with the attendees?
Just want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank NAMA for hosting this webinar and specifically the Pacific chapter. NAMA is a great organization. We need NAMA to be around because it focuses on HHW and wherein a lot of the other trade associations focus more on recycling and disposal. So thank you, NAMA, for being who you are, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us. This webinar